Last caress. I've got something to say. I killed a baby today. That line hit like a freight train dipped in fog and blood. But where did it come from? Not a horror movie, not a campfire story. It came from a punk band from New Jersey, and it changed music forever. Welcome back. Today we're diving into one of the most electrifying, spine-chilling, and wildly underappreciated corners of music history: horror punk. It's the genre that took punk's raw, rebellious fury and smashed it headfirst into B-movie monsters, classic horror aesthetics, and graveyard romance. The result? Absolute magic. And today, we're giving it the spotlight it deserves. Here's the thing: if you ask most casual music fans to name the foundational punk bands of the late 70s and early 80s, you'll hear the Ramones, the Clash, Sex Pistols. And yeah, those bands are legendary. But there's an entire subgenre that was born in that same era, cultivated a rabid and devoted fan base, and went on to influence everything from alternative rock to metal to pop punk. And it barely gets a mention in mainstream music history. We're talking about horror punk. And the reason it gets overlooked is almost ironic. It was too weird, too niche, too committed to its vision to be easily packaged for mainstream consumption. The band members showed up to gigs in corpse paint and torn leather, screaming about werewolves and serial killers. Radio programmers didn't know what to do with it. Critics didn't know how to file it. But the fans absolutely, completely, obsessively got it. And those fans built a subculture that's still alive and thriving today. So let's go back to the beginning, because this story starts in a garage in New Jersey, and it starts with one of the most important bands you might not know nearly enough about. The year is 1977. Punk rock is exploding. The Ramones have already put New York on the map, and two friends, Glenn Danzig and Jerry Only, are about to do something nobody else has the audacity to try. They form the Misfits. From the jump, the Misfits are different. Glenn Danzig's voice isn't typical punk. It's operatic, almost crooning, with a menacing undertow that sounds like it came straight from a 1950s horror film. The guitar riffs are catchy, almost pop, but wrapped in themes of murder, zombies, aliens, and the supernatural. Songs like Skulls, Teenagers from Mars, and Night of the Living Dead aren't just punk songs. They're short horror movies you can mosh to. And then there's the look, the devil-lock, that signature wedge of hair swept forward over the face, the skull makeup, the torn clothing. The Misfits weren't just making music. They were building a mythology, a brand new monster. Their 1982 debut album, Walk Among Us, is essentially the founding document of horror punk. It's fast, it's infectious, it's dripping with classic horror imagery, and it sounds like nothing else being made at the time. But the Misfits weren't alone for long. As the 80s rolled on, other bands started picking up the horror punk torch. 45 Grave, Christian Death, and Samhain, which was actually Glenn Danzig's own next project after leaving the Misfits, all pushed the genre into darker, more gothic territory. The sound was getting heavier, moodier, more theatrical. Then, in the 90s, a new wave of bands started emerging who had grown up listening to the Misfits. Bands like Wednesday 13's Murder Dolls, and perhaps most critically, AFI. AFI took horror punk's energy, polished it, and brought it to an entirely new generation of fans, proving this genre had serious staying power. If there's one moment that definitively cemented horror punk as a real, lasting genre, a moment where everything clicked, it might be the reunion of the Misfits. After Glenn Danzig left in 1983, the Misfits continued under Jerry only, but for years the original classic lineup was a distant dream. And when Danzig and Only reunited in 2016 at the Riot Fest festival, after over 30 years apart, the internet exploded. The show sold out instantly. Fans who had grown up on bootlegs and worn-out cassette tapes now got to see the real thing. And a whole new generation discovered the band for the very first time. But let me take you back even earlier to what might be the most pivotal decade for horror punk's identity, the early 2000s. This is when the genre truly splintered and multiplied. You had psychobiliacs like the Necromantics blending horror punk with rockabilly. You had gothabilly. You had death rock revivalists. You had bands like Calabrese carrying the straight-ahead horror punk flag with absolute commitment. The subculture had its own zines, its own fashion lines, its own conventions. Horror punk wasn't just music anymore. It was a lifestyle, a community. And here's what's wild. The mainstream started paying attention. Rob Zombie built an entire career that borrowed heavily from horror punk's DNA. Marilyn Manson took its theatricality and shock value and put it on arena stages worldwide. Lady Gaga's most avant-garde visual moments, there's a direct line back to the Misfits stage aesthetic. Even in hip-hop, artists like Flatbush Zombies and Us Suicide Boy carry horror punk's dark, transgressive energy into completely new sonic territory. The genre that radio wouldn't touch, it quietly infected everything. So, here's what we know. Horror punk was born from the radical idea that punk rock and horror culture weren't just compatible, they were made for each other.